Ladies and gentlemen, please make your way to the plenary as we are about to start with the next keynote address. I repeat, please make your way to the plenary, which is our main presentation room, as we are about to begin with the next keynote address. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us in spite of the heat. You're true troopers. The aircon is being fixed as we speak. We're going to have 2 keynote addresses, and then we're going to break away for lunch. So for the first keynote address, could you please help me welcome onto the stage Mr. Atli Gamundani from Schoolmans, who's going to be talking about digital, Internet of Things, information, privacy, and protection.
Good afternoon. Oh, good afternoon. Okay, that's much better. Before I step on anybody's toes, I'll just say all protocols observed, and I'll be good to go. As you have noticed, it's actually a Schoolmans slot, so I'm here to fly the Schoolmans flag. But what happened is Schoolmans approached us as the Digital Forensics and Information Security Research Cluster to actually share this on Internet of Things with you. This is why you actually see I am also flying my organization's flag, Namibia University of Science and Technology, also on this particular presentation. So, courtesy of Schoolmans, I have the pleasure to share with you on the following topic, Internet of Things, security, a focus on digital privacy towards personal information security. One of the things that we have actually noticed many times is that when it comes to IT professionals, we actually being accused of not speaking English. They say we speak jargony, and this is why sometimes people say we are antisocial. I'll try my level best to try and speak the normal English so that at least I can actually embrace most of you in the discussion. So what I'm going to be covering, I'm just going to quickly look at the following aspects. I've been told my time has been cut because we are about to go to lunch. I'll try my level best. So I'm going to touch on the aspects that I've just highlighted there. I hope I'll be focusing mostly on the personal security level, and this is where my focus is going to be very much, so that at least we try to understand what is this animal called an Internet of Things, and when it comes to security, how do we really try to understand how to secure the Internet of Things at a personal level. Right, so that at least I prepare myself for the stage, while at least I'm cooling my nerves down. I'll just give you this small brief to try and introduce Internet of Things.
The term Internet of Things. Sounds interesting, but what does the Internet of Things actually mean? IoT is an evolution of mobile, home, and embedded applications that are being connected to the Internet, integrating greater compute capabilities and using data analytics to extract meaningful information. Billions of devices will be connected to the Internet, and soon, hundreds of billions of devices. As related devices connect with each other, they can become an intelligent system of systems. And when these intelligent devices and systems of systems share data over the cloud and analyze it, they can transform our businesses, our lives, and our world in countless ways. Whether it's improving medical outcomes, creating better products faster with lower development costs, making shopping more enjoyable, or optimizing energy generation and consumption. Here's an example of the big picture. Imagine an intelligent device such as a smart traffic camera. The camera can monitor the road for congestion, accidents, and weather conditions, and communicate that status to a gateway that combines it with data from other cameras, creating an intelligent citywide traffic system. Now, imagine that intelligent traffic system connected to other citywide transportation systems, which get data from their own intelligent devices, creating an ever larger intelligent system of systems. The really big possibilities come from analyzing the end-to-end data across that system of systems. For example, let's say the city's intelligent traffic system detects massive congestion due to an accident. That insight can be sent to the citywide transportation system, which can analyze the accident's impact on other city systems. Recognizing the accident is near the airport and 2 city schools, it could notify those systems so they can adjust flight and school schedules. It can also analyze and derive optimal routes around the accident and send those instructions to the city's digital signage system to guide drivers around the accident. And that's just one example of the potential benefits that can happen when intelligent devices share insight with other systems, forming ever-expanding systems of systems. But how do we...
There it is, you heard it for yourself. What are Internet of Things? What are the potentials they are going to be presenting to us? We may look at that and think it's like a myth, or maybe we're actually dreaming of something that is going to happen. But the Internet of Things is already here. Just looking at a broader perspective of the whole IoT landscape, just to summarize what that video clip was just trying to demonstrate to you, we look at the various applications in terms of industrial automation, and there are thousands of applications that can actually be enabled through IoT. We talk of the home area networks, and there's quite a lot that can actually happen in that domain as well. And this is where I'm going to try and focus on, especially particularly on the personal area networks, where we are looking at the various components that can actually be interconnected around yourself. We look at you actually check how many paces have you done walking on a daily basis. You talk of your heartbeat rate checks. Maybe somebody is on a chronic disease and they're under a certain observation by their medical doctor. There is a lot of things that can actually happen around that. Then we have networked devices that can also be another application area that you can also try to look at. And there are various protocols that actually allow such connections to take place. So, like I've already indicated, I'm going to focus more on the personal domain, on the personal landscape. So what are the threats to personal information security? This is very much the focus of what I want to discuss on. To try and maybe contextualize that whole understanding, I would try very much to zero in on maybe the daily usage gadgets that we normally have, and one of the most central one is the cell phone. We use it in many times. I think for the previous talks that actually happened, especially as of yesterday, and also during the duration of this morning, all the way even to the last speaker in this venue, there's quite a lot that happens, especially with data. And we actually have a lot of apps on our mobile phones. Have you ever noticed one thing with those mobile apps? Each and every time sometimes you want to install a certain app, it sometimes allows access to your camera. It sometimes prompts you to allow it access even to your personal data. Sometimes because we need the services the app is providing, we unknowingly just accept some of those imprompts that those apps are actually prompting us to actually accept. What can we do? Do we have an option? You may ask. So looking at that, what exactly happens within that whole atmosphere? If I take an example for an app, for example, you actually have an app installed on your mobile phone. It's actually having access to your personal data. It's actually having access to your geolocation. And each and every time you're moving from point A to point B, it's able to track all your movements. Each and every time you do a certain transaction, it's able to track those transactions. And they can actually monitor how you're actually spending even your money. Can you imagine that? So those are some of the things that can actually happen. Let's see what the media says. And if you look at what the media says, sometimes it's very scary. And just this data is not that recent, but if you look at some of the aspects that are just being mentioned there, you actually be very much shocked. Like the mention of how the Internet of Things could kill you. Who actually, after reading that headline, would want to use technology? Anybody? Hacking the fridge, Internet of Things security vulnerabilities. Imagine your refrigerator is sending every bit of information inside your house to say you quarreled with your wife last night. Would you like that? But there's a lot that is happening. IoT security risks, just to try maybe and generalize and just come back to the personal as an individual. Let's look at everything that can be connected around you. As we have noticed earlier on to say, there are a lot of things that can be connected around you. Talk of your bicycle, talk of your beer, it can also be connected to you. Talk of every other gadget that is around you, it can actually be connected to you. What are some of the risks that can actually happen as a result of that? It's actually increasing the attack landscape that intruders can actually use. They will now be in a position to, they now have a lot of variety, they have a lot of choices to select from. Okay, this person likes their beer. I can use their beer to try and attack them. Can you imagine? Right. We are now talking of distributed denial of service attacks. In an article that I was just reading a day before yesterday, which is actually highlighting some of the recent challenges that the Internet of Things are actually presenting, this is becoming very major a concern, especially the distributed denial of service. Look at the various interconnections that the Internet of Things are able to formulate, and if they're in a position to try and have different attack vectors from all those connections or from all those networks, then there's a lot of danger that we're actually succumbing ourselves into. We now talk of botnets and malware-based attacks. Just to try and clarify, like I said, I wanted to speak in English so that at least everybody understands. When talking in terms of botnets, we're actually saying sometimes you may be having your mobile phone. It has now been compromised. It's now even a source of attack for other mobile phones. Let's say you're now communicating with your colleagues. Simply because your mobile phone has been compromised, it actually be spreading the virus, and sometimes you're not even aware. Innocently, it's actually doing that. So those are some of the challenges that you're actually also experiencing. Then we also have the issue of weakening perimeters, where we are talking of the different connections or networks that Internet of Things are able to actually formulate, and as a result, we may also have an appreciation, the different connections that these gadgets are also able to make, they are not even secure by themselves. Consider the internet, for example. Originally, it was not even designed for security, but just to make sure that communication is passing on from point A to point B. So on top of that insecurity, we are also adding on other gadgets that also needs to have their own security. We now also talk in terms of data breaches. A lot of personal information is actually being disseminated sometimes without your personal consent. You've allowed that app that you installed on your mobile phone to allow access to your camera, and it's actually sending your pictures without even your consent. That's the other issue that you are actually having. Then we have inadvertent breaches. Sometimes unknowingly, there's a lot of things that are actually happening as a result of the different connections that are actually being executed in the Internet of Things terrain. Then looking at the personal horizon, or looking at the person as an individual, what are some of the attacks that you can actually try to look at? This just gives an example of some of the challenges that you can actually face as an individual. To say you can actually have an attack taking control of the various devices that are around you because they have access to certain pathways or networks that links you or that links them to your personal information. And we talk of even if you have a smart home kind of a setup, your refrigerator, your alarm system, your water consumption monitoring systems, and everything that can be around your home, it can actually, one of them can be attacked. And by the fact that they're interconnected in a way, and sometimes you're controlling them from your mobile device, there is a cascading challenge in terms of the security loopholes that can be created around that. And if you're somebody who's also using, on the healthy side, some of the healthy monitoring gadgets and the healthy monitoring systems and apps, if one of them can be attacked, then a lot of also even confidential information is at stake. What are some of the privacy concerns that can be alluded, especially to Internet of Things? Let's take, for example, one of the most important things that I normally want to consider when looking at this aspect. What are your trust circles in terms of your smart devices? Who has access to your mobile phone? Who do you contact with your mobile phone? What operations do you do with your mobile phone? Your banking, everything that you do. And that actually presents a lot of challenges in terms of the globality of the network that can be attacked in terms of your Internet of Things connections that can be established. So, what are the challenges? I've already mentioned some of that. Revealing of personal information, your date of birth, your age, and everything. Sometimes you don't want it to be accessed by certain people, but it can be as a result of certain attacks. Then, as a result of the different techniques and tools that are there, we now talk of the different analytical tools like data analytics, and we talk of a lot of other sophisticated technologies. Now we talk of cloud computing in terms of storage of the data that is collected from Internet of Things. There is quick analysis of the data, and they're able to collect that information, link it to certain maybe activities that you do, and be in a position to connect the dots if they want to actually formulate a certain form of an attack. Just to give you a practical example, if you've ever received these malware or spam mails where sometimes they actually use your correct email address, and they actually send information sometimes to your friend, maybe, oh, okay, I'm stuck in Pakistan, please maybe deposit such and such an amount. They collect that information and they link with a friend of yours that is in another place. And that's how sometimes we actually find ourselves being at risk. Like I've already mentioned, we have a lot of technological advancements. We talk of cloud storage, we talk of all various data center technologies that are actually out there. It's now easy to store, and it's now cheaper to actually do that. And it's presenting a lot of challenges as a result. So what are some of these IoT security concerns? Consider your home. It's connected to your bank. It's connected to your car keys. It's connected to everything that is around you. What are some of the challenges? I've come across these 10 IoT security concerns that can actually speak to the human, to the personal interface, or you as an individual. Insecure web interfaces, like I've already mentioned, internet was never meant to be secure, but we find ourselves disseminating some of the information via the internet. We talk of insufficient authentication, and one of the things that have been noticed, especially through one of the reports that I was just going through, the ISACA report of 2015, where they were talking of the different aspects of Internet of Things security concerns. And one of the concerns they were saying, you would notice they did a survey of about 10 gadgets, and they noticed out of every 10 gadgets, 6 of them didn't have any authentication mechanism whatsoever, and as a result, it presents a lot of security risks. Then insecure network services. We are talking of the different networks that you are able to connect. Imagine you are connecting to Facebook with your mobile phone. You are connecting to various other websites. Sometimes they are not even secure by themselves. And you are actually using the same device also to access your bank account. And what are the loopholes that you are also creating, cascading to even the confidential and private information? We talk of lack of transport encryptions. The end-to-point security in terms of IoT is still at stake, because you need to look at how best can you secure the information that is being disseminated from your refrigerator to your mobile phone. It is passing through a certain network that is not secure. Then we talk of privacy concerns. What information about yourself, about your family, about everything around you that is out there, sometimes without your consent. Insecure cloud interface. Some of the cloud solutions that are out there, not every of those solutions are trustworthy. Of course, I'm not discrediting that there is a lot of other serious companies even present here that are actually doing serious work on trying to secure the cloud services. But imagine some of the services that we just find for free and you are actually utilizing, and you are using some of your personal gadgets to try and access information or store information on that. Insecure mobile interfaces. There's a lot that is actually happening around out there. Like I've talked of botnets. Imagine you have a compromised mobile phone that you are actually also interfacing with. how much of the attacks that it can also disseminate to your own mobile phone. Insufficient security configurations. Like I've already mentioned, one of the worries that is actually existing out there, there's a lot of challenge that is actually happening in terms of IoT manufacturers, because it's actually maybe as a result of the open system design in terms of actually maybe the industrial agreements. They are not sometimes allowed to encrypt or actually put passwords on their device. Maybe they have default passwords that are out there. And considering one of the latest news that is actually out there, or I actually mentioned about it, especially 3 days ago, they've actually come across with one attack that is utilizing that kind of a weakness, and they're actually fearing is going to propagate in the next coming year especially. We talk of insecure software. How much of those apps have been authenticated, and how much of those apps that you're actually installing on your mobile phone can you tell with utmost confidence that they are secure? That's one of the challenges that you can try to look at. Then, just to mention, or as a last point in terms of some of the security concerns, poor physical security. It's one of the challenges that actually even happens around even our workplaces as well. How many of you, in terms of your organizations, can you tell, especially from the top of your head, how many mobile phones, how many devices are connecting to your network? Can you give an inventory to the latter? And are you really following through which maybe user accounts or which profiles are they using to connect to their personal gadgets? Of course, we cannot stop people from bringing their own personal gadgets to organizations. We will not win that war. What are others saying? There's a lot that is being said around Internet of Things. Like I was just mentioning previously, to say Internet of Things security requires a rethink of risk management. Risk awareness is not enough when it comes to security. We need to actually do risk mitigation. We need to act. I was very much happy when the minister actually pointed out that on his address to say 2016 is the year of action. So we need to action on some of those risks that we're actually identifying in terms of Internet of Things security issues. Then this is the one that I was actually alluding to in terms of the recent discovery. The release of the Mirai IoT botnet malware highlights password security challenge issues. Its originality is still maybe very much debatable. They are saying it's originating from Japan, but one of the things that actually is happening around this Mirai IoT botnet, it's actually utilizing or capitalizing all the ignorance that we sometimes have in terms of the gadget that we're actually using. How many of you can tell me that they have sometimes maybe two-factor authentication on their mobile phones? The features are there. I only see a few hands. But are we doing ourselves a favor to try and also secure our own personal data? Those are some of the things that is actually happening. And sometimes the default passwords that we find on our gadgets, when we connect them and link them to even our home devices, we are just leaving the default passwords there. I will be actually shocked to the latter, especially if I come to your organization and I still, maybe if I found the telnet port still open. That speaks a lot about your security. So it goes back even to a personal level. How best are you securing even your personal information? Then Internet of Things poised to be a security headache. Of course, in as much as we are actually presenting this, please, I should have actually said it from the very onset. I'm not here to be like an adverse of technology or digital transformation. I'm just here to sensitize on what exactly is happening. Otherwise, when you're talking of security, sometimes it's a grudge purchase. You're actually like going this opposite direction while others are going this direction, because you're always known for dons and do not do this, do not do that. Just before I wrap up,
The Internet of Things and the exponential growth of associated technologies have presently reached 6 billion connected devices. Machines connect to each other. This automatic exchange of information with no human intervention opens up a new world of services and products. The range of IoT solutions, as well as the number of diverse environments within which it is used, conversely generates the potential for security breaches to be established across this heterogeneous web of connected things. We are facing a global scenario where security is no longer an option but is a mandatory requirement that we need to address. There are three basic security premises to follow. Prevention. Deter attacks to avoid losses. Detection. Identify attacks to enable a rapid and thorough response. Response. Address and mitigate the incident as soon as possible in a structured way to minimize losses and allow a return to normal operating business. There are three security levels. Level 1. Secure network IoT infrastructure. Security measures used within the communication infrastructure such as virtual private networks, dedicated and secure links. Level 2. Secure IoT enablement layer, communication-related alerts and automated responses. These include the detection of replacement devices or a change in location for devices which shouldn't move, such as a meter, allowing to call only the authorized telephone numbers. Telefónica's IoT solutions, such as Smart M2M, have these security levels 1 and 2 fully embedded by default, meaning you have peace of mind that your business is protected. Smart.
Just to wrap up, I'll just highlight a few points on looking into the future. Imagine you're at work, you receive a call from your friend. Hey, what's happening? I'm just receiving this email. You're out of soy milk. Your refrigerator has been hacked because it's sending out that information. We need to do something about it. Like I've already mentioned to you, I'm not trying to play the negative guy to say Internet of Things are not going to provide the solutions that we want. IoT is going to really enable the digital transformation that we want, and it's actually here to stay. It's either we ship in or we ship out, but it's going, and it's actually going to stay. But IoT is actually at risk. The need to actually try and find solutions that can actually leverage on what we need to gain out of them and actually suppress the risk levels is mandatory. Like other speakers have already also mentioned, do not be afraid to embrace technology, but be aware of your actions around it. So with these few words, I hope they were. I thank you very much.
Yes, another round of applause. Thank you very much, sir, for letting us know the importance of security. We should always be conscious and diligent of what is happening. I'm hoping I can get your presentation from you, just so I can give it to my 10-year-old brother every time he wants to unlock my cell phone. I think I'll be able to give him plenty of reasons why he cannot make use of my technology. Right, before we go to our lunch break, first I need to announce that we are at the ICT Summit, so Wi-Fi is available. So feel free to connect to the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi is telecom, and the password is, should I whisper this? Because I feel like it's a security. Telecom 2016. Telecom 2016 is the password for the Wi-Fi. And yes, before we go to lunch, speaking on infrastructure sharing towards economic prosperity, please help me welcome from CRAN, Mr. Festus Baneka. For those who didn't hear, the password is Telecom 2016. Lowercase.
Hello. Hello. Just want to make sure that I will be pressing the right button. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Festus Mbandega. I work for CRAN. I'm a CEO of CRAN. I want to apologize for keeping you here during lunchtime. Of course, I know that my colleagues who have preceded me, they will probably had the advantage because they shall not be rushed. They were not rushed, but I think now that it's, sure, it's almost 1:30, 2:30, so, but I'll try to be short. This presentation shall really cover the issue that I think is sincere to the hearts of the regulator, that's the infrastructure sharing. We'll examine how that plays a role in digital transformation and economic prosperity. Of course, those of you who were here yesterday and listened to Ms. Alisa Mpolo, she presented, she gave a presentation on network infrastructure as a catalyst for digital transformation. So this is a part 2 of that presentation. But since Alisa presented from the service provider point of view, this presentation shall be presented from the regulator point of view, looking at the general aspects, and we'll then zoom into the legal framework. Now, just as an overview, you should not be scared. The headings are many, but the presentation is short. I will look at the existing arrangement on infrastructure sharing, the definition of digital transformation. We look at the ecosystem, then definition of infrastructure in general, infrastructure sharing, how it promotes economic prosperity. Then you look at the regulations that regulate infrastructure sharing, the objective, the types of infrastructure sharing, the growing demand, and then I'll conclude. Just to set the pace, I think, as we all know, that this is not something new. Of course, technology has been with us for some time now, but of course, I think in many respects, we take it for granted. Digital transformation is defined as the changes that are associated with application of digital technology in all aspects of human society. So we have heard about from a very brilliant presentation by the previous speaker on Internet of Things. So that's what it's all about. This is actually the third leg of embracing digital technologies. Now, in brief, digital transformation is actually a process whereby we are all going paperless. As we all know that with technology now, you hardly carry any hard copies. You basically carry your cell phone, your iPad, and everything is there. So that's the transformation that we are talking about. Now, looking at the ecosystem of digital transformation, this is actually a process whereby there are two sides. There is a demand side and the supply side. So if you look at to the right-hand side, well, in the middle, let's just give you the elements. The elements of the digital ecosystem, actually the high-speed networks, which will then make available the services, and that services shall have to be accessed through applications, and those applications must be at least affordable and relevant, and then we'll have the devices and the users. So the demand side is really to your left-hand side, and the supply side to your right-hand side. So if you look at the elements of the ecosystem, the competition is not so much on the network as such, but it's really trickling down to the services, the applications, and the devices. So that's where the competition is. So because more or less the networks are all the same, it's just a matter of size, probably quality of service. So in putting this into context, when you look at the issue of users and devices, I think as much as we talk about, the issue of economic prosperity through digital transformation, we also need to look at, when we regulate, we look at the physical network, and we then also have to go down and look at the issue whether really, even if you make all this infrastructure available for everybody to share, the consumer or the users, we need not leave them behind, because that's a key element or critical part of the whole ecosystem. Now, in short, infrastructure can be defined to be both tangible or intangible. It's a facility that is used for the provision of network services or application services. And for clarity, tangible infrastructure may include the lines, your cables, your wires, fiber optics, apparatus, antenna feeders, access nodes, towers, tunnels, ducts, etc., etc. While the intangible includes agreements, applications, central database, network features, functions, wireless transmission, and other interests. Now, coming to the issue of infrastructure sharing, this is actually a joint utilization of infrastructure, whether it's assets or service, to provide electronic communication services. So this is basically, and this is the basis of infrastructure sharing, is to reduce cost of building, operating, and maintaining infrastructure. That's really the basis for infrastructure sharing. So if you look at some of the networks, infrastructure network in the country, I'm sure you have been, the notable case here is the various towers. If you go outside, let's say, Usagos on your way to Arandes, I think there are two pairs of towers, sitting next to each other. And then one always asks, why are these towers next to each other? So that's a clear case of duplication of infrastructure. And then when you look at a country like ours, where you have a very big, country with a very small population, so we need to think deeply about these issues and see how best we can optimize some of this. So this picture is actually common if you go around the country. The other day I had a call from one of the councillors, and apparently in his constituency there are two towers next to each other, and he was asking if, he informed me that apparently his community was demanding that one of the towers should be named after him. And then I was now wondering why. It seems that to the ordinary man in the street, the more, the towers in some of these in the areas, it's a symbol of something, that at least the council have done something, has brought in something. So not just one tower, at least there are two towers. But when you look at it, from the economic point of view, it is very costly for us as a country, to the operators, and also at the end, it shall be costly to the consumers. Now, the infrastructure sharing actually speaks directly to the element of high-speed network services and application. It's highlighted in the ecosystem. The connection between infrastructure sharing and economic prosperity actually is this, that it is associated with reduced capital expenditure, reduced operating expenses, reduced barriers to entry and prices. As we all know that in certain situation, of course, because of competition and because of market, the operators would want to expand, spend a lot of money to have their own network all over the place. And at the same time, as we all know that when the times were good, the revenues was rising. But we know that the revenue is almost going flat. And it will become very expensive for us to continue this path. So therefore, the point is really this, that infrastructure sharing is aimed at addressing all those issues. Probably not to eliminate the issue, but at least to minimize so that we allow the optimal use of the infrastructure. The issue pertaining to the barriers to entry, I think that is probably more of an issue to the aspiring entrant into the market. As we all know that they don't have the capital to start up their own infrastructure. They have to rely on the bigger boys, the incumbents. So they will go to Telecom or to Apparatus or to MTC and wanting to lease space on their towers. But of course, it's a power game. Sometimes, when you have a smaller player who is not even owning the market, the power to bargain is limited. So now you will spend a lot of months just negotiating a lease agreement. And sometimes because of probably the revenue that the incumbent shall generate from that particular player, they show very little interest, or they are not under pressure to finalize the negotiations. So that is an issue, and I think we come across this issue more often, especially with the new applicants who want to enter the market. And at the end, I think that's an issue that all of us, as a regulator, operators, and the public as a whole need to address. This infrastructure sharing also addresses the issue of increased competition and internet use. As we all know that if you have dominant players in the market and they are well established and they are not making it easy for the other players to come into the market, of course, that will affect competition. And we want to create a level playing field so that all the players basically have access. So long as, of course, you shall not have access, to share the infrastructure for free, so long as that is done on fair and reasonable terms. Of course, other areas that are associated with the infrastructure sharing is also the expanded access to broadband, which is also a crucial element of development. And in addition, internet is also an important delivery tool for development projects and essential to other areas such as health, education, agriculture, government as well. So basically the benefits that one can derive as a result of infrastructure sharing among all the players are many. It will trickle down to all aspects of the economy. The internet increases opportunity as well in many areas, be it economic, sustainability, and also enhances governance transparency and accountability. As we all know that as the people are becoming exposed to information through the use of technology, they shall then have information that will enable them to make the right decisions. Instead of going to the banks, they simply have access to the information that at least they can do financial transactions through technology. And at the same time also in other aspects, when it comes to the issue of accountability, they shall have access to information to know that government has passed a law or is planning to do A, B, C, D, and then to hold its government to account. So the benefits goes beyond just economics. It covers many other aspects of our lives. Now, just before I move on to the specific aspects of the infrastructure sharing, of course, we know that prior to the formal regulations of infrastructure sharing, there exists infrastructure sharing between the players, which has been always a voluntary process. I must say that when you look at the number of areas where the service providers are really sharing infrastructure, I think it's not a bad start, especially when you look at the bigger players. They have started the process, and that has been going on for some time. Of course, that's a matter of necessity. because you go to the areas where there's telecom, but they have infrastructure there, but MTC is not there, or Paratus, or vice versa. So they were forced to basically, cooperate and share. Sorry. Now, with the whole idea of creating, more opportunities for new players and making it easier for them to also enter the landscape, it is, in terms of the legal framework, provided that, the incumbent must at least avail the infrastructure to be shared. The Communications Act, Section 48 and 50, makes provisions for that. 48 basically imposes duties on carriers to afford access to its infrastructure. And 50 sets out obligations and conditions for infrastructure sharing by the operators. Now, as a result of those sections, the regulator then felt that it was important to go deep into the process so that that process is regulated to ensure that the rules are fair, so that the players, when they engage each other in the rules that are very fair and reasonable, so that it's not left in the hands of the players. So the final regulations prescribing sharing of infrastructure was published last week. So as I'm talking to you, it is now in force. So we are just in the process of implementation. Of course, this is probably not so much of an issue to the consumers and users as such of ICT, but to the licensees and service providers, because it obliges them to do certain things, especially the incumbents. What is important, though, to the consumers and users of ICT services is to really start to take interest in some of these issues, because at the end of the day, they shall share the cost once this process is on. So therefore, it is not just an issue for the operators alone, but it's an issue for all of us. We have heard, I was attending another presentation talking about the OTT, and the demand to really regulate the OTT so that at least they are brought into the fold. So that's an issue that affects infrastructure. The same thing with the Internet of Things. It's a matter of infrastructure. If you don't have the infrastructure, all those issues shall not be easy to realize. Now, the purpose of the regulations is really to set out the framework for sharing of infrastructure between the telecommunication utilities and broadcasting service licensees. So that's to regulate how they would share the infrastructure, and how they will engage each other, and what will happen when they have disputes or when they are not able to agree on the terms. Another point is that the regulation sets out the terms upon which party must agree to fulfill the obligation in terms of Section 48 and 50 that I have already highlighted. And further, to ensure that conditions and charges for agreement between the parties are reasonable, non-discriminatory, and fairly apportioned. So that simply means that just because you own the infrastructure doesn't mean that you have to force upon the smaller player to accept the terms. So you are required to at least go through negotiate in good faith, and then offer the terms that are more reasonable, and you don't discriminate. You cannot now say, well, I will give you these terms, but I shall not give the same terms to the next operator who will come wanting to share my infrastructure. So it must be fair, it must be non-discriminatory. Now, the objectives, actually, of implementing these regulations I've highlighted really is to do the following. To extend geographic access to electronic communication service beyond the current areas, urban areas, semi-urban areas, in rural areas where we still have services, to go beyond that and try to reach out on the underserved areas by lowering investment costs with shared infrastructure. As I've highlighted earlier, that at least if infrastructure is being shared between the operators, that will then enable, that will enable the players to go beyond the prime areas. As you can see that in most cases, even with the new applicants, they are not really interested in going to the rural areas because for them, there is no business case. But those people that are there, we cannot leave them behind forever. We need to find a way to also bring them into the fold. As you have heard about the Harambee Prosperity Plan, it has set out certain objectives. And that, I think, is the purpose that you need to look into. How do you then create also opportunities for those who are in areas where it's not economically viable to, to also have access to information, so that we enable them to benefit from the ICT, eventually to create economic prosperity for all. Now, the other point is that this will also decrease environmental impact as a result of implementing infrastructure by reducing levels of duplication of infrastructure. This I have already highlighted, and we have seen that in most cases, especially if you look at in an area where there's a concentration of operators, you will have a lot of towers, all over the place. But I think this is really the point that we seek to address, to say, let's clean up this process, and let's see how best we can then optimize, the use of the resources that we have, and reinvest the savings that we are making into other areas where services require the most. I think that takes us to the point where we are even have to consider decommissioning some of the infrastructure and redeploying them to areas where they don't have services. I think as operators, regulators, we need to engage each other on that process so that we really see how best we can capitalize in that process. So the other point that it's addressed through these regulations, it allows for savings incurred in capital and operational costs of the infrastructure to be invested in growing demand side for the services that I have already addressed. Now, another point is that it stimulates innovations. So with the availability of ICT services and also probably the sharing of infrastructure, that will then create new opportunities for new players to also come into the field and also start innovating and see what kind of service they can provide, because they will now have at least a better chance since they will have access to infrastructure. They don't have to put up their own infrastructure. The other point is also that it addresses abuse of dominance and anti-competitive behavior. Of course, that is very, very important, especially for bigger players that sometimes, when you're in that position, you don't really feel the need to move along and accommodate others. So that's just natural. So therefore, with these regulations, we really hope that this will address some of those, issues. Of course, the process is still left up with to the service providers or to the licensees to engage first. But in case where things don't work out, that's when the regulator will then step in. And the last point actually just complement the earlier one. Of course, the types of infrastructure sharing that is provided for, it can be both active and passive. With regard to active infrastructure, that refers to fiber access nodes, antenna feeds, wireless transmission networks, etc. And that's just a picture of highlighting what is involved in terms of the options available, in site sharing, the elements thereof. Now, the passive infrastructure refers to the ducts, poles, building sites, mast power supplies, shelters, air conditioning, etc. Just some of the research that has been done by the ITU, that is the International Telecommunication Union. Basically, suggests that growth in service happened mostly rapidly where regulatory enablers have been put in place to leverage the latest innovation. So this is simply to highlight that if you have at least organized, framework where, the parties are actually, they engage each other in a more structured fashion, at least you have a good chance there to have more innovations. Now, growing the demand for digital services. As we all know that telecommunication industry, or ICT in general, is critical to this process that we're talking about. That's digital transformation. So industry players from all sectors, be it education, health, retail, finance, and government, they depend on telecom to provide their services to their customers. So without then, educating our people how to use technology, how to take advantage of ICT, basically that will be difficult for us to then maximize the benefits that we hope to get from the use of ICT. So therefore, we need to equip our people with skills through training and education, how to use ICT and how to use technology, so they can then benefit both economically and socially. The investment that we put into this process and the regulations should not only be restricted to the infrastructure or the service, but it must also address the upskilling. What you realize sometimes we go out into the regions or to some institutions, we put up very nice, facilities where you have internet, where you have all these facilities, broadband, but then we don't provide the skills so that that institutions is actually maintained, even with the basic ICT skills, so that you may ensure that that process continues. So the moment there's a slight problem, then the whole system is down, the whole community is in the dark, then they have to travel long distances to go and seek for services, because we have not looked beyond just setting up. We need to start looking beyond setting up and look at how we can maintain those infrastructure that we put there, and also how we can also ensure that our people are skilled enough to be able to take advantage of those services and ICT technology. There are some observations that have been made from various studies that 10% increase in broadband penetration in developing countries is associated with 1.5% increase in GDP per capita. So those are some of the studies done by the World Bank. And another point also that countries that have implemented a regulatory framework for infrastructure sharing have seen proportion of households with internet access increase with 14%. That's another study by the ITU. Now, just to conclude, it basically just to highlight that infrastructure sharing, therefore, it is a catalyst to economic development in that it encourages competition, it optimizes resources, it also ensures that there is universal access. So universal access is the whole process where you are trying to bring into the fold those underserved areas. As we all know that there are still many. So with this process, we are hoping that that will help to close that gap, those dark spots. As we all know that we have more or less a very good coverage in Namibia, but those dark spots, we still need to address them. So we're hoping that with this, we shall be able to address some of those gaps. And we believe that with these regulations and this process, we shall be complementing the Harambee Prosperity Plan and the objectives of the Ministry of ICT. That's to try to bring in as many people into the fold in the use of ICT. Thank you very much. I believe there are no questions. Thank you, Mr. Milton.
Yes, sir. You know my question already.
Thank you.
When do we get number portability? Question number one. Number two, the development fund. The idea of having a development fund so that there can be money for the rural areas. Why don't we allow the service providers to get credit against that development fund?
Thank you. Any other question? Okay. Just to take the first questions on number portability, I think we have good news for you, Mr. Milton, now that, as you have well put it, that is the last question, or the last time you're asking these questions. In fact, as we are talking to you now, we are already in the process of setting up the numbering plan that will then eventually, enable us to do number portability. So that should come into force within the next 2 years. So we have engaged the operators on the issue. We are working together to bring about that process so that at least we will be able to then make it easier for the consumers to be able to put their numbers. Number portability basically refers to the process whereby if you are with MTC and then you decide to take out your services with player X, you don't have to change your number. You simply take your number and then go to the player of your choice. And those are the benefits that number portability will bring. It will make it easier and convenient and probably cheaper for you to do so. You don't have to change your number. For business, you don't really have to go back to the operators or to your consumers or your customers and say, look, I've changed my number, my new number is so and so. No, you simply take your number and then you go. So that's the benefit that number portability will bring. So it's on its way. Just give us a bit of time. But it's on its way, the process is already on in earnest. The other question was on, the development fund. In fact, I must correct you, we don't have a development fund. I think what you are referring to is the Universal Access Fund, the Service Fund, I'm sorry. In terms of the Act makes provisions for the regulator to establish the Universal Service Fund. We have just finalized the regulations to set up the fund that shall then be set up with the contributions coming from the licensees. So that's a process. The regulations were passed, I think, in July this year. So we are now just working on the modalities, how to then set up the fund. And that fund shall then, once there is money, because now there is nothing. As we all know that when you're starting something from the scratch, either you get money seeded from somewhere, in this case maybe from government, or from other entities that probably want to get the process going, or then we go back to the same operators or our licensees to start contributing to the fund. So that's a process, but of course it will come. And the main purpose is exactly what, as you have said, is to take the services to underserved areas, rural areas where it's not economically viable for the operators to go there. And the operators who shall go there shall then be, identified, and then a formula shall be worked out how to give them subsidies to take those services to those areas. And at the end of the day, once the service is there, I think that also creates demands. It's as you say, once we have introduced somebody to something, then when they start tasting it, it's very nice. They will start demanding for more. So we believe that in the long run, that shall not only be good for the consumers, but that shall also be good for the operators, and that shall be good for the country. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Franz. I just really 2 questions.
You can name them 3 actually, Franz.
The first one,
No, just joking.
Mr. Festus, in fact, you are my father. My father's name is Festus.
I'm happy they're saying that. Okay, Franz.
So, really from the regulatory point of One Africa, for instance, grow to the extent that they also want to have their own product. And now they are, that extent is they administer their own license. As consumer, as citizen, we will be having broadcasters having their own, administering their own TV license. I feel the aspect of paying TV license should not be necessarily with NBC. As a regulator, you need to own that responsibility. Put that in context. If, for example, one Africa had to do that, how do we manage the situation? So I want you to be very bold enough. I wanted to say this point, whether even the minister was here and the duty of NBC.
We are the regulator, France, so
That point,
you can talk to us.
That point for me is a big concern, and I feel maybe that's just what I wanted to do to come on. Because NBC is relaxing. Not NBC is relaxing, but Craig is relaxing on that aspect of NBC. Thank you.
Thank you, Franz. Franz, I'm not too sure if I get your question very well. Are you then suggesting that you should not paying for the services that you are getting from the...
No, we should pay. We should pay. No, I will never advocate for that.
Yes.
We should pay, but I give you a perspective to say, for instance, One Africa now want to have their own system like NBC, and we should pay to them. So I feel like the system of paying for a TV license from the broadcasting point of view as a regulator, why can't we have that, or find a way to fine-tune, not necessarily give that to an institution.
Yeah, Franz, I hope I understand you correctly. I think the point is really this, that the broadcasters, as we have mentioned, they provide services to the public. And they have set out formulas or methods how to collect the, to get people to pay for the services that they provide. Of course, NBC, in terms of the law, they have the power to issue licenses, to set the, at the same time, the other players also, they have their own mechanism to collect, money from the viewers who are viewing their services. So now I'm not just too sure as what is it that you are proposing, or what, because they are not doing this on behalf of CRAN, they're actually doing it on their own behalf. So what we do is to enable them to operate within the legal framework that is regulating the broadcasting sector. So I'm not now too sure what you are saying. Oh, John.
No, maybe just to help out the colleague. Am I not loud enough?
No, I can hear you.
Maybe what my colleague is trying to address is the problem, which is probably not there, that you pay for what you are paying for is for the device, and that's in the Act. And this device called a TV enables you to watch DSTV, One Africa, NBC, and many other channels that you can add. So that's a once-off payment. It's in the Act. Unless we are saying maybe, if at all, which is probably also not necessary, maybe that fund should not be administered by NBC, but that's something totally different. So you are not paying for NBC per se, you are paying for the device. Like you would pay for, what is that device called? That small one, the popular one? Huh? You see, you pay for it, eh? Same difference. Thank you.
Yeah, Franz, I would encourage you, I think if the answer is not sufficient, to engage us further. Maybe we'll get a better understanding or to better appreciate your question. But really, those are really mechanisms put in place by the service providers to generate revenue for the service that they are rendering to the to their customers. So of course, that the issue whether that is fair or not, that's not for us to only if there is a clear evidence that something against the law is taking place. But that's really, you pay for the services and for whatever, comes with it. But if I would want to encourage you to engage us further, even after this session, so that we can. Any other question?
I think that will be our last question for today, if that's all right, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bandeka. Now we're going to break for lunch. I'm just going to explain the lunch logistics. The green ticket is for the restaurant. The cream ticket is for the tent. You receive tickets on your way out. However, if you are part of the regional and local authority representatives, a member of parliament, or a CEO, please remain seated and your tickets will be brought to you. And if you're affiliated with any of the sponsors, the tickets will be at the stand. After lunch, we'll also be handing out questionnaires where there will be prizes to be won. So we'll see you on the other side.
Thank you.